Hi, my name is Daniel Harper, a 25-year-old guy. I started seeing my girlfriend Chloe, 25 female, at the beginning of my graduation year. We dated for about 4 years in college, and after we got our jobs, we decided to take our relationship further by getting engaged. A year before we decided to get engaged, Chloe and I wanted to get to know each other better. She introduced me to her family a few months after we started dating, but I told her that I was not that close to my family. Unlike my family, Chloe grew up with loving parents and a younger brother. They weren't wealthy, but they did everything they could for her. Seeing her close relationship with her parents and how she shared every little victory with them made me realize how much love and care she must have grown up with. I still remember the first time I met her family. I was very nervous, but her mom, Sarah, and dad, Mark, were so welcoming that I immediately felt like part of their family. Her younger brother, Brian, quickly became like a younger brother to me. The warmth and acceptance I felt with Chloe's family were in stark contrast to my own experiences. As I entered their home, it felt different. It was so welcoming and fresh. I didn't realize how nervous I was until Chloe squeezed my hand. "Relax, babe. They're gonna love you," easy for her to say. The door swung open before I could even knock, and a woman with warm eyes and a welcoming smile engulfed me in a hug. "You must be Daniel. Chloe talks about you all the time." "Hi, Sarah." I stammered, surprised by the hug, but instantly disarmed by it. Come on in. Don't just stand there like a lost puppy." I heard his voice from the kitchen. A tall man with a laugh etched into his face emerged, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "You must be the famous Daniel. Chloe hasn't shut up about you." It turned out it was the grilling enthusiast Sarah had mentioned. And yes, the questionable grilling skills were evident from the slightly charred burgers, but the smoky aroma and the laughter around the dinner table made it the best meal I'd had in ages. Later that evening, Chloe's little brother Brian shyly approached me, a plate overflowing with chocolate chip cookies in hand. "These are the good ones," he mumbled, shoving a warm cookie into my hand. "Don't tell Dad I gave you any." We both grinned. A silent pact formed over stolen cookies. By the end of the night, my initial nervousness had melted away. Chloe's family, with their warmth, humor, and genuine acceptance, was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. On the other hand, I had always been hesitant to introduce Chloe to my mother, Amelia, and her husband, Richard. I never considered him as a father figure. My mom is the only family I had left, as my dad has been absent from my life since my parents divorced when I was young. A few months after the divorce, my mom brings her boyfriend Richard home. Richard is an ex-convict and an alcoholic, known for his violent temper. He went to jail for assaulting a man over a dispute about wine. As a child, I had no option but to bear his presence. Firstly, my mom would bring him around from time to time, but as time passed, he made himself at home there. He never spent a single penny and, like a leech, stuck to my mom. She was desperate for male validation in her life. After my dad left her, she found her worth questionable. As a child, it was difficult to understand, but after a few years, I could see that clearly. My mom also had self-victimization issues, which she didn't want to accept, so therapy was out of the question. I was in high school when my mom married Richard. It was another story because then my dad married someone else and refused to give her more alimony. My mom, Amelia, hardly let me see my dad, and it's not like he cared for me that much after losing custody. Even though I never considered Richard a father figure, we didn't get along because half of the time he was drunk and the other half he was a certified jerk. But Richard, on the other hand, thought of himself as my father. He introduced me as his stepson, which led to a few quarrels back then. One day at dinner, Richard suddenly introduced me as his son to his clients, which I didn't like. My mom made me come to that dinner so her new husband could make a good impression in front of his latest client. "You have already met my lovely wife, and this is our son Daniel." "You mean stepson, Richard?" That was an awkward moment, which I left him to handle. After that, Amelia and Richard gave me an earful, but that was the fact, and I stood my ground. "What is wrong with you? Why did you have to embarrass Richard?" "Mom, for the fact that he is your husband and not my dad. You should be careful not to misinform people. And Richard, no offense, but please don't call yourself my dad because you are not." My mom became defensive and decided to cut off my pocket money for the rest of the season, while Richard feigned sympathy. "Oh, honey, don't be too hard on him. If he's uncomfortable with calling me dad, it's understandable. I don't mind." but I knew he did mind, otherwise why create all this drama? When I turned 18, I moved out of the house to escape the toxic environment my mom, Amelia, and Richard created. However, she never let me cut her off completely. She constantly guilt-tripped me, reminding me of her sacrifices as a single mother who put a roof over my head and food on my plate. She would often say on call, "You're my only son, Daniel. You owe me. One day you'll have to take care of me." It's not that I have any problem with taking care of my mom, but I can't handle her entitlement. Despite these manipulations, I managed to build a life of my own. Chloe knew about my strained relationship with my mother, but hadn't fully grasped the extent of it. I kept delaying the introduction, knowing how it would likely turn out. But as our relationship grew more serious, I realized I couldn't put it off any longer. Finally, the day came when I decided to introduce Chloe to my mom. I wasn't looking forward to it, but I knew it was a necessary step. "Chloe, please don't get your hopes up, and you don't have to worry about impressing my mom, as I've already told you about her." "Come on, Daniel, how bad could it be? I just want to know your family and I am as nervous as you were." Chloe deserved to know all parts of my life, even the difficult ones. Little did I know that this introduction would set off a chain of events that would change everything. I carefully chose a weekend for the introduction because Chloe wanted to get to know my family. I was also aware that no matter what, Richard would be there too, so I made sure to inform Chloe about it. Chloe and I went there at noon. I wasn't expecting much from my mom, but to my surprise, she prepared a whole feast. She made a roast chicken with vegetables, a dish she usually reserved for special occasions. It was accompanied by roasted potatoes, carrots, and green beans. Chloe complimented her on the meal, and for a moment it seemed like things might go smoothly. As expected, my mom's reaction wasn't very enthusiastic, but unexpectedly, Richard showed some visible excitement to know my girlfriend's background. "What a pretty lady you are, Chloe, right, sweetheart?" My mom agreed with her most fake tone. "I was so excited to meet you since Daniel told me about you. I couldn't wait to see you." "Me too," I was telling him for a while. After some random questions, which Richard was too eager to ask Chloe as if he were my parent, he finally got to the point. "So Chloe, what do your parents do?" "My mom is a housekeeper, and my dad works in the garden." I saw my mom almost rolling her eyes. "He is a gardener?" "Yes." After Chloe told her about her parents, my mom's tone shifted. "A housekeeper's daughter and a gardener? How quaint, Richard. We've got ourselves quite the working-class princess, don't we?" "Indeed, Amelia. Seems like Daniel's taste is rustic, to say the least." "Mrs. Harper, my parents may not have fancy titles, but they work hard and have instilled in me values that money can't buy." "That's right. They've taught Chloe the true meaning of integrity and perseverance, unlike some people I know." The tension was palpable. And I wasn't here to see more of my mom's toxic behavior. I stand up from the table. "See, Chloe, this is my mom you were so eager to meet. I think you've gotten to know her enough, so shall we get going?" Seeing me mad, my mom took a sip of wine, calmly, as if she knew I wouldn't cut her off the next second, and said, "Oh, come on, Daniel. I was just joking. Why are you getting so worked up?" "Honey, it looks like we really sold it." "Oh, Daniel, it was just a prank." Both of them started laughing as if they had just pulled off the best joke in the world. I was so used to it, but I can't let it slide. It didn't make me laugh, though. "Chloe, did it make you laugh?" Chloe was trying to be patient with my mom, clearly wanting to leave a good impression, but I couldn't see how any of this was beneficial. She said softly, "It's okay, Daniel." "No, it's not okay, Chloe." I turned to Amelia and Richard. "You both need to understand that this isn't funny. Chloe's parents are hardworking, decent people, and they deserve respect, not ridicule." My typical mom rolls her eyes so hard. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Daniel. It was just a little fun, and Cole didn't mind. Right, Cole? If this is your idea of fun, then maybe we should leave. I won't let you disrespect Chloe or her family." I could see the shock on my mom's face as I stood my ground, something I rarely did. Richard's smirk faded, replaced by a look of mild surprise. "Oh, come on, Daniel. Don't be so serious. We're all family here, right?" "No, Richard. Chloe is my family, and if you can't respect that, then we have nothing more to discuss." I took Chloe's hand and headed for the door. As we left, I could feel the weight of my decision, but also a sense of relief. It was time to put my mom and Richard in their place and prioritize the respect and love that Chloe and her family deserved. Clearly, my mom wasn't expecting that, but I was ready to cut her off if needed. I had plenty of reasons for it, not only because of this incident. As a child, my mom put a lot of pressure on me to perform well in academics. She constantly reminded me that she did everything alone, using that excuse to justify her high expectations and demands. She often claimed she would never marry again to focus on raising me, but then married him anyway. I don't have any problem for her to move on in her life. Despite marrying Richard, she continued to assert that she did everything alone, which she did because Richard was not capable of raising a child. During the divorce, my mom took every bit of savings and every single penny from my dad, including his house. She also made sure to secure the maximum child support. That was another reason she waited so long to marry Richard. Eventually, she married him, which was surprising for me, but after learning that he inherited huge property and business from his family, it made sense. Otherwise, she wouldn't date him in the first place unless there was some benefit. That's the kind of greedy woman my mom is, always looking for an advantage to benefit herself. Growing up, I always felt like a pawn in her game of maximizing benefits. She controlled every aspect of my life, from my education to my social interactions, all to ensure that I would become her ticket to a better life. It was exhausting, and the older I got, the more I realized how manipulative and selfish she was. She went to lengths to control my life. She chose who I talked to, my friends, and almost everything. After that incident, I decided not to stay in touch with my mom, Amelia, but she never gave up. She kept texting me on Christmas and New Year, even though I didn't reply. When I asked her to apologize to Chloe, she said she didn't have anything to apologize for. Eventually, I decided to confront her about it. One evening, I finally picked up my phone and sent her a text. "Mom, I need to talk about what happened at dinner. Chloe was really hurt by your comments. I think you owe her an apology." The response came almost immediately. "What's there to apologize for? I was just expressing my honest opinion. That girl, Chloe, she's simply not good enough for you, Daniel. You deserve better. Someone with class, someone who reflects your accomplishments." "This isn't about accomplishments, Mom. It's about love and respect. Chloe is kind, intelligent, and beautiful. What more could I ask for?" "There's plenty more, darling. Someone who comes from a good family, someone who can navigate your social circles with grace. You wouldn't want to settle for mediocrity, would you? Chloe's background doesn't define her worth. I'm done with this conversation. If you can't respect my choices, then there's nothing more to say. Suit yourself, Daniel. But don't come crying to me when you realize I'm right." With that, I stopped texting Amelia. I had hoped for some reconciliation, but it was clear that she wasn't willing to change her perspective. For the sake of my own peace and my relationship with Chloe, I had to distance myself from my mom. A year later, Chloe and I decided to get engaged and make it official, which made both of us very excited. My initial vision was to also surprise her with a proposal. When I discussed this with her best friend, she told me that Chloe's mom, Sarah, wanted to have a grand event for her only daughter. So, I decided not to make it a surprise proposal but a big one instead, and I liked that idea. Chloe and I planned a grand engagement party, and Sarah insisted on booking the venue for us. I was thinking of inviting my mom, and Chloe supported me, but I only sent the invitation to my mom and did not include Richard. To be honest, I never liked him and didn't really want him at my engagement party. When I sent the invitation to my mom, she immediately called me, but I didn't pick up. Then she started texting me, asking why I didn't invite Richard since he is her husband and my stepdad. I simply replied that it was because I didn't want to. When I didn't reply to her text, she started calling Chloe, demanding that she should invite her future in-laws to our engagement. Chloe replied that it was up to me, not her, to decide who to invite from my family to our engagement party. When my mom doesn't get what she wants, she does anything in her power to play the victim card. She made posts on social media stating how sad Richard was because his stepson didn't invite him and how disappointed she was. This led to other relatives asking me what was going on and accusing me of being ungrateful. I had to clear this up before the party because I didn't want any drama. After that, the day we had been waiting for finally arrived, and the air was filled with excitement and joy. The engagement party was held at a beautiful, elegant venue that Chloe's mom, Sarah, had booked for us. The venue was a charming event space in the heart of the city, decorated with twinkling fairy lights and soft, pastel-colored flowers. The aroma of fresh roses and lilies filled the air, creating a romantic ambience. The guests, a blend of Chloe's family, friends, and a few of our close friends, mingled and enjoyed the celebration. There was a sense of warmth and togetherness that permeated the entire room. Chloe's family was well known for their hospitality, and they made sure every guest felt welcomed and cherished. The soft hum of conversations and laughter added to the festive atmosphere. A live band played soft jazz music in the background, adding a touch of sophistication to the evening. A beautifully arranged buffet table offered an array of delicious foods, from gourmet appetizers to decadent desserts. Glasses of champagne were being passed around by attentive waitstaff, ensuring that everyone had a drink in hand to toast the occasion. Chloe and I were filled with happiness as we moved through the room, greeting our guests. Chloe looked stunning in a pale blue dress that complemented her eyes, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride and love every time I looked at her. She was the center of attention, gracefully moving through the crowd, her smile lighting up the room. As the evening progressed, it was time for the big moment. I had planned a heartfelt proposal to make the evening even more special. Chloe's best friend, Emily, signaled to the band to stop playing, and a hush fell over the room as everyone turned to look at us. Taking a deep breath, I gently took Chloe's hand and led her to the center of the room. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity and excitement. With all eyes on us, I got down on one knee, feeling a mixture of nerves and overwhelming love. Chloe, from the moment I met you, I knew my life had changed forever. You brought light and joy into my world, and every day with you has been a blessing. Your kindness, your strength, and your love have shown me what it means to truly be happy. I was so nervous and my heart was beating as if it had exploded. Chloe's mother, Sarah, stood nearby, her eyes glistening with tears of joy. Her father, Mark, had a proud smile on his face, and her younger brother, Brian, watched with wide eyes, clearly excited for his sister. Emily stood close to Chloe, ready to offer her support, her own smile broad and encouraging, and I continued. I cannot imagine my life without you. You are my best friend, my confidant, and my greatest love. Chloe Bennett, will you marry me and make me the happiest man in the world? Chloe's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Yes, Daniel, yes. She finally managed to say, her voice choked with emotion. The room erupted in cheers and applause as I slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to embrace her. Chloe's family rushed forward to congratulate us. Sarah hugged Chloe tightly, whispering words of love and happiness. Mark shook my hand firmly, welcoming me into their family with genuine warmth. Brian jumped up and down, clearly thrilled by the whole event. Emily was next, wrapping both of us in a hug. I knew you two were meant to be. As we stood surrounded by the people who loved us, I felt a deep sense of contentment. This was the beginning of a new chapter in our lives, one filled with love, family, and the promise of a bright future together. In the midst of the celebration, I spotted Mom, Amelia, making her way over with Richard. His presence, uninvited, was a snag in the festive atmosphere. Daniel, I can't tell you how excited your mom and I have been for this moment. Really? Daniel, I can't believe you were so ungrateful. You didn't even invite Richard after all he's done for you. Don't worry about it, honey. Family doesn't need an invitation, right, Daniel? He clasped my shoulder in a hug, a gesture that felt overly familiar considering we weren't close. The theatrics are a bit much, Richard. After excusing myself from the awkwardness with Mom and Richard, I found my beautiful fiancée, Chloe, again. The party was rocking. Emily and Kevin were doing a fantastic job as hosts. The music started perfect timing for our first dance. I took Chloe's hand, her eyes sparkling with happiness. This was our moment. Earlier, something felt off about Mom and Richard's sudden change of heart. It was all a little too enthusiastic. Then I saw Sarah, Chloe's mom, exchange an uncomfortable glance with Amelia. My gut clenched. Hey, Sarah. I greeted, hoping to clear the air. Oh, Daniel. I'm so happy for you both. She beamed. A genuine smile, maybe? I almost started believing everything was okay. Except, Sarah excused herself to the restroom, leaving her phone on the table. It buzzed with a notification, then another. Curiosity gnawed at me. Glancing at the screen, I saw Mom's name on the alert. The phone wasn't locked, and temptation got the better of me. Peeking at the screen, I saw a string of texts from Amelia, all requesting to talk. A long conversation, judging by the message. Sarah returned, her smile a little strained. I mentioned casually, Sarah, your phone kept buzzing. Oh! Must be the hall manager. I'll get back to you. She dismissed me, a flicker of unease in her eyes. As Sarah hurried off, I caught sight of Mom following close behind. Curiosity gnawed at me. Mom and Sarah weren't exactly besties, so this sudden chat felt off. I trailed after them, keeping a discreet distance. Mom was whispering, her voice barely audible over the music. The whole thing was starting to bug me. Richard crashing my engagement party was bad enough, but now this? Just as I rounded a corner, I heard Mom's voice, a bit clearer. This will be great for Chloe and Daniel too. After all, we're going to be a family. The hallway. That's where they were. And to my surprise, Mark and Richard were there too, all huddled in a tense conversation. I cut in, my voice laced with suspicion. Sarah, Mark, Mom. What's the big meeting away from the party? Sarah flinched, her smile faltering. Oh, Daniel. Mom chimed in a little too quickly. Just catching up, dear. Nothing important. Interesting. My gaze lingering on Sarah's increasingly uneasy expression. Her eyes darted around the group before settling back on me. I reached for her hand, my grip firm. I said in my lower voice, "Is everything all right?" She scanned everyone's faces, a web of worry etched across hers. Finally, she forced a smile. She stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, everything's fine. Let's go." But the way her hand trembled in mine spoke volumes. There was definitely something going on, and I was done playing nice. I wasn't going to let this secret conversation slide. Hold on a second, Mark. What's going on here? Mark shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting away from mine. Nothing, Daniel. He mumbled some excuse, brushing it off with a forced smile, practically dragging me back into the party. I rejoined Chloe and tried to forget the strange vibe. Later, I spotted Richard holding court with Chloe's relatives, a wide, insincere grin plastered on his face. After a few minutes, he returned, his voice dripping with theatricality. You know, the first time I laid eyes on you, I knew you and Daniel were destined to be together. Cavan tapped my shoulder, pulling me into conversation. As I chatted, I caught a snippet of Richard talking to Chloe. Chloe, I wholeheartedly accept you as our daughter-in-law, dear. Your parents have raised a remarkable young woman. Annoyed, I excused myself from Cavan. Brian was nowhere to be seen. Finally, I found him huddled in a corner of the garden, sniffling and wiping his tears. As I approached, he flinched, startled by my presence. Hey, Brian. Moniri, I said gently, sitting beside him. What's wrong? Brian hesitated. If I tell you, will it make things better? Maybe. Mom and Dad have been really stressed lately because... Suddenly, Sarah appeared, her face etched with worry. Oh, Brian. There you are. Daniel, I've been looking everywhere for you. Before Sarah could explain further, I blurted out. Sarah, I know you're hiding something, but if you truly consider me family, please be honest with me. Sarah sighed, her shoulders slumping. Daniel, of course, your family. We wouldn't dream of keeping secrets from you. Mom, maybe you should just tell him. Sarah hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. Amelia and Richard. Well, they're your parents, and we all want Chol to be happy. So, if they need any help as a family, we're here for them. Wait, what kind of help? Brian explained, looking at Sarah and then me. Recently, Mom and Dad inherited a house near a development area. Richard keeps pushing this new client to buy it. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Chloe had mentioned the house and how it was their dream retirement home after years of saving. Why would they want to sell it? They don't want to sell it, Brian whispered. A wave of disappointment washed over me as he looked at Sarah. It was clear Amelia and Richard were pressuring Sarah and Mark. Sarah, did my mom approach you about this? Sarah nodded reluctantly. Yes, but... And you agreed? I interrupted, a wave of anger rising. Why didn't you tell me sooner? We didn't want to sell it, Daniel. I wanted to tell you, but Richard thought it was best to keep it quiet for now, to avoid affecting your relationship with Chloe. I didn't want my daughter's happiness to be at stake. Sarah, it's not your fault. I should have known better about my own family. I apologize for putting you in this position. You don't have to deal with them anymore. I'll handle it. Sarah looked relieved but still worried. But Daniel, what are you going to do? Just trust me. I led Sarah and Brian back towards the party. where I spotted Richard still chatting up Chloe's relatives. I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, my voice laced with barely contained anger. "Richard, we need to talk." Richard turned, a surprised smile twisting his face. Then, his expression darkened as he saw Sarah and Brian standing behind me. "What's this about, Daniel?" "What's happening, Daniel?" "Nothing, sweetheart." "They told me everything, how you and Mom pressured them to sell their retirement home. Is that why you were so eager to accept Chloe as your daughter-in-law?" Richard's smile faltered. "What are you talking about? You've got it all wrong, Daniel." "No, I understand everything perfectly. Now get out." Amelia materialized beside Richard, her voice sharp. "How could you speak to Richard like that?" "It's just a misunderstanding, Daniel. Why don't we talk about this later?" "Later? You didn't even tell me about this and pressurize Cole's mom and dad for selling their home, and if you're in on this, Mom." I turned to her. "Feel free to leave with him." Richard puffed up his chest. "Daniel, that's no way to talk to your mother." "Really? Then maybe you should have considered that before badgering Chloe's parents." Without another word, I strode towards a security guard, my jaw clenched. "Security, escort these two out." Richard blustered for a moment, but seeing my resolve, he and Amelia left the party. As they walked out, whispers rippled through the crowd. Later, I found out that my mom, Amelia, ranted on her social media about how ungrateful her son turned out and how he insulted his parents and kicked them out of his engagement. After when the dust settled, some of my family sided with me, saying I stood my ground. Others thought I overreacted. But one thing was clear: I don't think I did anything wrong.